Ryan. I'm a literacy specialist, and in this video, we're going to go over some parent tips to help you support your young child with writing. So writing is actually one of the most challenging tasks that we can ask young children to do, at least academically. It involves so many things, and that's why there's an image of a puzzle here. There's so many things that a child has to think about and master before they can really do a lot of writing. So first of all, the child needs to be able to hold a pencil or other writing utensil correctly. They may have to choose an idea to draw and write about. Even just drawing with details, that can be something that's challenging for students depending on where they are in the development process. Then we eventually ask them to spell words. Well, what letters do they use? How do they spell these words? And then eventually we ask them to construct sentences. So there's so many things that go into the process of writing, and that's why it can be so challenging. As adults, it can be challenging for us too, because when we see a child's writing, we see the mistakes, we see the misspelled words, and it's easy to want to correct them, but then how do we do that without also discouraging them, right? We want them to enjoy writing, to be encouraged and be motivated to keep on writing. So it's really a careful balance. Writing is just something that's hard for young children, and it's also challenging for us as adults when it comes to supporting them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about holding a writing utensil. As you probably already know, this is a skill that takes time to develop, and it also requires certain development of muscles in the hand, really small muscles in their little hands. And so doing things like working with Play-Doh or clay, even though that's not writing, it can actually help strengthen the hand muscles, which then makes it easier for them to hold a pencil or crayon for an extended period of time. You can see here on the right-hand side, we have two illustrations of ways that children can hold the pencil. The top one is called a tripod grip. The pencil is grasped between two fingers. Well, actually it's the index finger and the thumb, and then it kind of rests on the middle finger. Another option is called a quadrupod grip, and so we've got two fingers and a thumb holding the pencil, and then it rests on the ring finger. So either one of those is okay. If your child is struggling at all with proper pencil grip, a couple of things you can do. One really easy thing is just have them drop and then pick up the pencil correctly multiple times. So they hold it correctly, they drop it. They hold it correctly, they drop it. Do that a few times. You can make it a fun game. And then another thing that can help your child is actually to use a crayon or a shorter pencil, because that encourages proper grip. They're kind of forced to hold it more correctly because they can't, for example, grasp it with their entire fist because the pencil or the crayon just isn't long enough. Something else that goes into the writing process is your child may have to choose an idea to write about. You know, sometimes the teacher may specify exactly what the child is supposed to draw and write about, but sometimes your child may be asked to come up with an idea on their own. Either way, talking about the topic beforehand will help your child draw and or write, depending on where they are in their development, with more details. So if your child is supposed to write and draw about a farm, start talking with your child. Maybe you've been to a farm, talk about what you saw there, or maybe your child has seen farms on TV or read books about farms. Just talk about those things, talk about the farm animals, ask your child what they imagine they might see on the farm. Really, we want your child to be doing more of the talking, and that will make it easier when it comes time to sit down and actually draw and write about it. And speaking of drawing and writing, one really important thing that we need to keep in mind when we're working with young children is that the process of writing or writing, the product of writing, is actually just a way to communicate, right? So we might write a note to someone, an email, we might write a list for ourselves, and that communication can actually be done in drawing as well. So if your child is being asked to write a sentence, maybe they're not there yet, but eventually they will be, drawing before they write the sentence can actually be something that helps them with the writing process. Drawing is an important step. Kids don't go straight from learning to talk to writing. There's drawing. And so your child may be able to communicate many different ideas through drawing, and drawing helps them learn how to write. Speaking of drawing, let's talk about drawing with details. You may have noticed that when your child first started to draw, it was just scribbling, and that is normal. It takes time for children to learn to draw with details. We want to encourage them to move from, just a simple stick figure to drawing the facial features on a person's face and hair and all those little details. And the reason for that is that it actually helps with a child's future writing success. It helps get them ready for more typical writing tasks. So to encourage your child to draw with more details, wait for them to finish and then ask something like, wow, I noticed that you added the nose on the person. What else could you add to their face? So in a really positive way, just ask them questions to encourage them to either look at something in real life or imagine something and then use that picture in their mind to include more details. And more details can be facial features, like we said. It could be a background to the drawing. It could be, if they're drawing a room, the items in a room. Really depends on what they're drawing, but it's just going beyond, really quick sketches. Eventually, your child will begin to spell words, and often teachers will have kids take a drawing that they've made and write labels. So for example, if a child drew the sun, they might ask them to try to write the word sun. Or if they drew a dog, to try to write the word dog. Now, your child may know some of these basic words. They may know mom and be able to label that easily. They may even know the word sun or things along those lines. But for those words that they do not know how to spell yet, what they should be doing is stretching out the word, listening for the sounds in the word, and then trying to write the sounds that they hear. Now, that can be a really tricky and challenging process at first, especially if your child doesn't know all of the letter sounds yet. However, doing this, using this invented or sometimes called temporary or kid spelling, this process of stretching out the word, listening for the sounds, and then writing them actually helps them learn letter sounds. So it's such a good thing. It's okay if they don't know how to spell the word dog. It's good for them to stretch it out and go through that process. So let's say that your child wants to write the word hat. And they say to you, Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, how do I spell the word hat? So instead of just telling them H-A-T, what you want to do is encourage them, say, stretch the word out. And so you can help them. You can say, hat, hat. What sound do you hear first? They should hear the sound P. And you can help them if they don't get it. You can help them along the way in this process. And then ask, okay, so what letter says? Do you know a letter that says? You can help them if they don't know. But again, the point is to try to let them try and write something, even if it's incorrect. That is okay. And then you go back to stretching it out. Okay, you wrote hat, hat. What do you hear next after? They should be able to identify a. And again, it takes time for them even to be able to identify the sounds. Vowel sounds in English are especially tricky, so they may not get it, and that's okay. Maybe they say t. If they say t, then just ask, okay, well, what letter do you know that says t or makes the sound t? And then maybe they can write T, or maybe they can write it with your help. And at this point, maybe they just have the letters H and T. And they might ask you, is that right? Did I get the word right? And here, of course, we eventually want them to get to the point where they're spelling words correctly. But at this level, it's okay to just say, well, listen to the sounds again. Did you write all the sounds? And if they say yes, then yes. And it's okay to leave it like that. And actually, if this is a piece of writing that your child's teacher is going to be looking at, we really would like you to leave their spelling as it is, to not correct. And that can be so hard for parents, right? All adults, we want our kids to become good writers, good spellers, but your child's teacher actually needs to see what spelling mistakes they're making. They need to see that learning process, because your child's teacher can't plan instruction and help your child if they don't have a good sense of what your child's development level is. And so if you're doing a lot of helping, if you're doing the work for them or always correcting them, then your child's teacher doesn't get that really valuable information that seeing the incorrect spelling would give them. So in a nutshell, this process of inventing spellings for words or using what they already know about sounds and letters it's important for so many reasons. And it actually helps kids learn the letter sounds. It helps them with learning to read. So encourage your child to stretch the words out. It's okay if the spellings are wrong. It's okay if they miss sounds. It's all part of the learning process. And we just want your child to become more confident in doing that on their own. Because if you imagine a classroom with 20 kindergartners, if the teacher has to tell every child how to write every word, then first of all, that's just impossible. And second of all, nothing would get done during the day. So kids need to develop that confidence to try to spell words on their own. So we've talked about how a child will move from scribbling to drawing with more details, actually drawing things that they see or drawing from their imagination. And eventually they will begin to write words with some help. And then one day they'll be more ready to construct an entire sentence. And sometimes it can be hard for kids to even get a concept of what a sentence is. It's really abstract, right? But one way we often explain this is we say a sentence is a complete thought. Now, writing a sentence, coming back to that metaphor of a puzzle, there's so many pieces involved, right? The kid has to figure out what they want to say. They have to think about spaces between words, maybe a capital letter, a period, spelling the words. There's so much going on in their little brains. And so it takes time. It takes lots of time for kids to get to the point where they can write a sentence that's actually readable by us adults. So one step in that process is for the child just to remember the sentence that they plan to write. So many times we see a child will, plan a sentence like, I went to the zoo. And then they start writing. And because there's so many things going on in their brain, they forget that the sentence that they were writing was, I went to the zoo. So to help with this, have your child practice repeating the sentence about 3 times before they write it. So if your child says to you, okay, I want to write, I went to the zoo. Say, okay, tell me that sentence 2 more times. I went to the zoo. I went to the zoo. Another support that you could give to them if you feel that they need it is you could draw a horizontal line for each word. So I, horizontal line, went to the zoo. Now that's not something that you have to do, but if your child is having difficulty spacing between words or just remembering the sentence that they were going to write, these horizontal lines can help because the child will write the word on top of the line. As your child is beginning to construct these sentences, expect lots of mistakes, missing spaces, incorrect capitalization. You might see capital letters popping up in the middle of the word, and that's okay. This is all part of the learning process. And again, just like with the misspelled words, your child's teacher needs to see those mistakes. Otherwise, they don't have a good grasp of where your child is in their development. They can't help your child if they don't know what things they are still working on. There's absolutely a time and a place. Maybe your child is writing a story that they're going to share with the whole family, and maybe you want to help them fix it up and make it correct for that. That's great. But you'll have so many everyday assignments where the writing is just not expected to be perfect. And again, your child's teacher really needs to see their mistakes so that they know how to better help your child. Last but not least, writing and drawing. These are things that should be fun at this stage. This is a way for kids to communicate their stories, to tell things that have happened to them in their lives, to draw about things that interest them, to draw and write from their imaginations. This is a process that, while it can be challenging, can also be very fun. So remember, just try to keep your own stress levels low. It can be so hard when, we see our child struggling or we want to correct all these mistakes that we're seeing. Take breaks. Let your child sometimes choose what they want to draw and write about. Just make it fun, because at this stage, it's really about growing little writers who, yes, eventually they'll get there where their grammar is better and their spelling is better. And at this stage, we just want to encourage them, empower them, and let them have fun. I hope that this video was helpful to you, and I hope you have a good time writing and drawing with your child.